Ladies and gents, hey, what is going on? Tony Berardo here. Thanks for tuning in to yet again another episode of the Berardo Podcast. Of course, I am your host, Tony Berardo. You know, this week I have a couple really fun and exciting episodes where I got some guests coming on, experts in different fields that I really enjoy. So I can't wait for you guys to see that. Those should be up in a couple weeks here. If you're watching this now, they might even be up already, or if you're listening to this also. But on this episode, I really wanted to make sure we kind of, talk about the elephant in the room, and that is this massive pandemic. I think we're almost there, right? Like, I think we're getting to the point to where it's starting to get back to normal. Things are kind of going our way a little bit. So I want to do a quick episode and share my thoughts on A, how this thing has affected us, and then B, how we can be using our time proactively to get the most out of this horrible situation. So a couple things I learned I want to share with you guys. I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
It's just funny. It's funny, the way you tell the story and everything.
Funny how?
Come here though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you?
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Are you ready?
All right, so listen, it's been funky out there, no doubt about it. It's definitely been a little funky, and I think this pandemic's over, right? Kind of. We're slowly kind of getting back to normal. Businesses are opening up. Of course we have to wear the mask, and that's what I think is the most interesting thing I wanted to talk about, which was there's this massive debate on whether or not to wear this mask or not. And I think the big question we have to ask ourselves is, how much does it really affect us by wearing a mask? And also, what is it helping, right? So you might be on like different sides of the spectrum, and maybe sometimes you want to wear the mask, sometimes you don't. And I get it. I know it's kind of frustrating. But at the same time, I also kind of think of it like, if the experts are telling us this is probably the best thing that we should be doing, and by experts I mean CDC, World Health Organization, and you might also be kind of frustrated because those numbers have been kind of skewed, and we don't know if it's because people are getting more COVID because there's more testing, or maybe it's because some political ideology, or maybe there's just some bullshit numbers out there, or maybe really people are getting COVID. And I don't think we'll ever know this thing. That's probably the most crazy and frustrating part about this, is we won't really know the truth. We won't know if COVID is a real danger to us all. And I think that's for a lot of reasons, not probably for the reasons that you think. And for the reasons that you think is maybe because your political views, you think this is a way for, the left or the right side to go at the other side. And maybe there's a little bit of that, sure. Maybe they're taking advantage of it. But I also think there's a lot to consider when it comes to this disease. Everyone compares it to the flu and how we react to the flu, and the flu kills more people than COVID. Why don't we wear a mask for the flu? And those are all great points. My biggest thing is, I think because this is so new, it's important that we do too much than not enough. Meaning, if wearing a mask is stupid, then maybe we do it just in case this COVID thing is the real deal. It's almost like when you're going out with someone for the first time, you want to be overly nice because you don't know how much bullshit you can get away with just yet. And then you finally get to know the person, and then, truth comes out, and you probably end up, breaking up with the person because it was just a horrible idea. But that's kind of the thing, is we're still new to this relationship of COVID. Like, it's not even a year old. It just, maybe February, I think, was the first time that overseas they started really getting concerned about it. So not even a year. This is very new. And we just have to kind of take it easy. We can't get offended by wearing a fucking mask, or, restaurants and bars are closing, or whatever you're offended by. And I know it sucks, and it's definitely hurting the economy. No question, this is going to change the world we live in. I just think in general, we're going to, views are going to be a little bit different with everything. There's a couple points that I wanted to talk about, and that's, work. at least for my job in particular, there's a lot of changes. But even the wife, some of the conversations that she's had with her company, and they might not ever go back to the office. And I think that's something to be not really concerned about, but kind of excited about. It wasn't too long ago, like 10, 15 years ago. What if someone told you you're going to be looking at screens all day long? You're going to be able to have a screen portable, and you're going to be able to walk around and watch movies on it, and watch instructional videos on this thing called internet and YouTube for free. Like 15 years ago, you would have told that person to get the hell out of here, right? You think they're a witch or something. Like, no way that's going to happen. So I think a lot can change in 10, 15 years. And I think we're kind of in one of those very important times right now where companies are really starting to identify, wait a minute, so we can actually reach our goals, and we can do stuff that we have to do to make sure our company's profitable by having these cats at home and working from home and setting certain parameters and certain goals. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So that's one thing to consider is, if you're not working from home already, I think that might be more of the future. I know Google and Facebook are already doing that where they're never going to have an office. But then you also got to think to yourself, from a company standpoint, it's saving the office a ton of rent, right? Because, now we can actually focus on having, instead of buildings with offices and us stacked on top of each other, which I personally think is super unhealthy as it is. Like, we're animals. We're not meant to be like stuck in cages and, balled up and in these concrete and metal structures on top of each other in these weird cubicles. Like, we're supposed to be frolicking in the nature and shit. Like, that's what's in our DNA. So I think it's good that hopefully that we're not going to be in these buildings for much longer. And maybe we can use that space that would be retail, and maybe, big corporations, instead of opening up, multi-billion-dollar office buildings, maybe we could focus more on agriculture. Maybe they could spend that money on something that's going to help the environment. Maybe something a little bit more where we can preserve land as opposed to just creating metal concrete structures on top of our gorgeous land. So, maybe that's the future. I mean, I don't know. Like, jobs in general, I think, are going to be able to be a little bit more broad when it comes to what we can do. Because, if you're working from home and you have one specific job, but maybe there's another job that opened up where, maybe there's someone that's in charge of the tech side, maybe a digital manager or something that's running kind of the digital aspect of it, and that job didn't exist. So where some jobs may be lost during this pandemic, I think a lot more are going to open. And that's kind of exciting too. And, if you are one of the lucky ones like myself that have a job and didn't lose it during this pandemic, if you are lucky enough, I think it's important that we bring value to those jobs, throw out some of these ideas, because if they have to make some tough decisions and your name comes up that you came up with a good idea, you'll be able to secure your job. So that's huge as well. And, bringing value as in going above and beyond, going the extra mile, because I kind of look at this pandemic thing where a lot of companies have to make these tough decisions. But if you don't want to be stuck in that conversation where they're going to let you go, I think you got to bring value to your job. I know me personally, I'm going above and beyond where I used to wake up every day. If I had to go to an event or to the office, or I had to travel and I was supposed to be at a certain spot at 7 o'clock, now at home, I wake up at 6 o'clock and I work for an extra hour. And then instead of getting done at 5 o'clock, I get done at 6 o'clock. And then, of course, I focus on the podcast and stuff. But I work an extra hour to 2 hours every single day, whether it's doing emails, writing out ideas, creating presentations, whatever your job entails. If you put a little bit extra in, to that job, and your boss or your leaders, they know about that type of stuff, there's a lot of value in that. And these guys and gals that run these companies, maybe they can't afford that extra legroom or to pay you that extra amount of money. So you're helping them out and you're bringing value during these tough times. So that way, maybe they don't have to shut down their company. A lot of bars and restaurants, I hate to say it, but, of course, it's horrible, right? Because I love going out, I love being social. I even have buddies that, own bars and restaurants. And I hate to say that they had to shut down some spots, but, not using them as an example, but other larger corporations like, the Applebee's, the TGI Fridays, those companies might be hurting from this, but they have a little extra money, right? So they might choose to shut down locations just because. But then I also look at if I was an employee and I lost my job in that, ruffle and tuffle, if I lost my job, I could have been doing whatever I could to make sure that my friends, my neighbors, went to my place of work to keep that place in business. And if they weren't open, they were ordering takeout. They were doing DoorDash or Uber Eats from my place of work. And that's what I'm talking about here is you got to go above and beyond. You got to go the extra mile to make sure that people know where you work and that people use your services, because that's what we have to do. You have to hustle your job that you're working at, because if you're not doing it, you're not doing yourself a favor and you're not doing your company a favor. It's like if you want to own stock, you own stock in the things that you have, right? Like own stock in Facebook because you use it. Own stock in Apple because you have Apple products. You want to support the companies that you're a part of every single day. And that's a big thing. And that's really going to help people out. And then of course, if you, did keep your job, that's very exciting. It's awesome. But maybe look for a backup, have a plan B. I think a plan B is important. The best time to look for a job is when you have a job, right? I mean, I've always done that. I'm so happy where I'm at. Like, it's tough for me to see if the grass is green on the other side, because I don't think it gets any better than where I'm at. And I'm like, I got my dream job that I've always wanted. So it's hard for me to look for another job, but also you kind of have to, right? You have to have that plan B. God forbid something happens. And then, I think money's important now too, right? Like, don't think that you're going to have a job during this whole thing. Like, it might very well come to an end where you lose your job. And during that time, do you want to say to yourself, oh shit, I spent thousands of dollars on Amazon because I was bored at home during the pandemic and I could have used that money to save. That's what we have to be really careful of, is don't spend your money on stupid shit. Now's the time to be frugal. Now's the time you really want to be careful with the type of, groceries you buy, the type of supplies that you buy. If you go clothes shopping, now's the time to be careful. The wife she's gotten a lot better, but during this pandemic in general, it's been kind of frustrating because she's bought more clothes than like I have in my entire closet. And I have a lot of clothes, but most of the stuff is like Monster Gear and it was free through work. But she's bought a lot of clothes. And I talked to some of my buddies and their wives have been the same thing. And I know it's tough because you're online and you're shopping and shit, but you're buying more clothes now. Like, we haven't gone out in 6 months. Who the fuck are you impressing? So, if you're spending $500 on those clothes, if you lost your job, then you're going to wake up one day and be like, fuck, I wish I had that $500 because I didn't do anything with those clothes. So I think now's the time we really have to be careful. And we have to be frugal. And we have to think about our purchases. A lot of friends, a lot of family that you might actually, need to help out. Family in particular. Family, now is the time to help out your family. You don't have any obligations besides work. You don't have to go to a bar and a restaurant, spending $100 on a fucking meal. Like, you don't have to do any of that stuff, right? That's the important part. Is the only thing that you have an obligation to do is to wake up, go to work if you got a job, and take care of your family. That's the obligation right now. Is I think we all have to come together and we have to support each other. And to do that, we got to make some sacrifices, and those sacrifices are the little things. Not spending money on stupid stuff, focusing on your job, doing what you got to do to be the best human you can be. And now is a very important time that we need to do that in. But I also want to kind of talk a little bit about, our living situation. It's really kind of made me think during this whole pandemic thing that where we live is like a cool part of town, but I don't think it's going to be like that forever. Like it always used to be cool to live downtown, right? Because you were near the most badass bars and the cool trendy restaurants and the parks and all that bullshit. But this pandemic has really made me understand that we don't necessarily A, need that, but B, I think other companies and people that might actually want to build, whether it's parks or restaurants or bars, it's really not important anymore. Because you look at like those cool spots that were downtown and they were hip and trendy and everyone loved going to them. Well, those places shut down because of this pandemic. So how important is being downtown? It's probably as important as being anywhere, because when shit hits the fan, it hits the fan and it affects us. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more in the future trendy little restaurants and bars and stuff, they're going to open up everywhere. Like, we just need to realize where we live, we need to open up cool shit around us. Like, we need to create our own little downtowns. And I think that's what's going to happen a lot, because we're starting to see how impactful it was to the earth of people not going out for 6 months. Like, think about that. I mean, the pollution in China and all these places that had really bad pollution, even like down in South Florida, Miami, if you look at the water, it went from like murky and gross to now it's like gorgeously clear. It's kind of crazy. And we're realizing that if we're not on the road and we don't have these cruise ships out, we don't have all this bullshit going around, the earth is a really, really cool place. And we can get around without using our car. We can get around not doing a whole lot by just staying in our communities. And that doesn't mean, let's not venture, let's be hermit crabs and let's hang out. But ultimately what I'm trying to say is, if you live in Orlando, downtown Orlando was the place to be, right? And everyone knows in Orlando, because I used to live in Orlando, downtown Orlando was a spot, but now you're spending, $2,500, $3,000 a month on rent. Why? Because you want to be close to the restaurants, the bars, the parks, Disney, all that stuff, right? That shit wasn't open the past 6 months. So you spent all that money every single month to be in a spot that you couldn't do shit. You had to be stuck in your room, spending that money and not doing nothing. So what's the point? Why live near those places? If those places exist, cool. But why not let's build those places all over the place, so that way there's not a huge influx of people in one area that we have to drive and get through traffic, and you're stuck in traffic, you're in the car, you're yelling at people on the way to downtown, and then once you get there, you're so pissed off you end up spending a shit ton of money on alcohol. Like, this is not the way to live. We should be able to get outside our house, see a little bit of nature, walk up and down the street, and you got some cool spots to go to every now and then. There shouldn't be one specific part of a city that is the most poppin', because when that happens, everyone flocks to that part, and ultimately what happens? The traffic, people are driving, the pollution. I mean, it's just a vicious cycle that we've been stuck in, and I think maybe New York brought us that, like, in the 70s and 80s, and Vegas and all these places that popped open in the middle of nowhere, that those are the cool, hip, go-to spots. But we got to get away from that. We got to start thinking to ourselves, we got to open up our community a little bit more, so that way we can spend, $1,000 on rent and still have some really cool spots to go to, that we don't have to travel 30 minutes stuck in traffic to go to like a cool spot. So, I mean, kind of getting away from all that, during this time, this pandemic, and it's still kind of going on, but it's really made me spend more time focusing on hobbies. Obviously this podcast has become, more than a hobby at this point, but, even little things like reading, writing things on paper, just kind of getting my thoughts on paper and having the time to spend with myself and my thoughts and not worry about a lot of other bullshit, because during this pandemic there wasn't really a whole lot to worry about, right? Because all we thought about was COVID. So it was kind of weird to think about anything else. So just getting away and stepping outside and just focusing on myself and what I wanted to do, and I think that was a big positive. And then other interests that I had, like even the wife and myself, we picked up on a lot of different hobbies, doing stuff around the house, and going on walks, and we talk a lot more, which is weird. Normally we would just kind of get on our phones and play around on our phones, and of course we still do that now, but I think we do a little bit less because we're so hooked on the screen during work, and we're at home. We don't want to be like stuck in this complacent thing where we're just on our screens 24/7. So when we get off work, we just spend time with each other and, have constructive conversations, maybe talk about each other's day, but we also talk about what's going on in the world and our opinions on it. And sometimes we disagree, sometimes we agree, sometimes we get in these long conversations that, are a lot of fun and educational for both of us, and we both learn a lot. So doing things like that, I think, are a lot of fun and, very beneficial. But one thing I also notice is I'm not worrying about the media as much, and a lot of that has to do with there's just been so much back and forth on what's right and what's wrong. And I don't think that's ever going to change. Some of us might be optimistic, thinking to ourselves, well, Fox and CNN might, one day be the same network. No, man, it's never going to happen. I think we're getting more and more divisive as the days go on. And I'm not sure why that is. A lot of it, I believe, has to do with not just politics, but, we don't really have an enemy. This COVID was an enemy, but, we don't really have an enemy. And I think the whole police brutality and Black Lives Matter, I think that kind of awoke a lot of us. And, the enemy isn't police. The enemy isn't any one particular race or gender, because we all are on the same team. So I think the news and media have to pin us against each other to A, create a story, but also B, create an enemy. I talked about this on podcasts before, where us as a society, for some reason, it's built into our DNA, and I think humans have evolved out of that. But media has understood that, there's two things that sell: sex and violence, right? So they know, not media in general, but, ads will sell you sex, media is going to sell you violence. There's a reason why we like horror movies and action films, because there's a lot of action, a lot of violence. We're drawn to it. There's something in our DNA that, because we can't go out and hunt saber-toothed tigers, we need to see it, right? It's the whole gladiator analogy where, everyone's lined up in the Coliseum and they want to see the action. They want to see a lion and a man go at it. And they know for sure the man's going to die. They know it. Like, it's bound to happen. And we're okay with it. And, we kind of have gotten out of that, but, there's also places, all across the country, South America, Central America, that do, bullfighting, and there's tons of examples of it, but I still think we need to see that. And if you can't see it at your house, like in your backyard, that you want to see it on the news. And the media knows that, and they capitalize on it. And that's a problem, man. We got to understand it. We have to accept the reality of the media is not here to help us. They're a business just like anything else. They're a newspaper that wants to create a cool headline. They're a Facebook post that wants attention. When you post something on Facebook, you post it for two reasons: A, for you, or B, for someone else. Me, honestly, I could probably say I do a little bit of mixed. Not intentionally, but, sometimes I'll post something for myself where it's just my thought, and I'll throw it up on Twitter or Facebook. And, like I had a thought the other day where I just wanted to post something, so I just wrote on Facebook and Twitter, give more, expect less. It was just a thought. It was just a thought that was in my head, and I didn't want to forget it. And I knew Facebook was going to go, up in the cloud, and the internet was never going to forget about that post. Sometimes I regret those posts, but that one I felt good about. So I posted it. That was for me. There's other ones that I post for you guys, and I do that intentionally. But sometimes we do that. And whether you know it or not, you do it. Sometimes it's for you, sometimes it's for others. Media is 100% for them. They do not care about you. They're posting because they want to get the clicks. They want to get the likes. They want to get the follows. They want to get the watches and the views. Do not think for 1 second, whether it's Fox, CNN, doesn't matter what program you watch, they're reporting something for themselves, not to inform you. Because if they wanted to inform you, they would give you the correct or right information all the time. But I think we all know that's not really the case. So I've been kind of avoiding as much media as I possibly can. And I'm kind of digging it. I like it a lot. Of course, I get my news just like anybody else. Fucking Facebook. I guess that's what we're doing now. But honestly, I get it because of the updates. Sometimes I'll just see like a alert or something on my Apple device, and I'll check it out. But I've realized during this pandemic, aside from COVID, these last 4 or 5 months, every single post that is up on media, whether it's political, whether it's about my town or my city, nothing really affects me unless it affects me. So like this, COVID thing, there was lockdowns. Sometimes there were certain days, said it wasn't mandatory. It was just suggested that we couldn't leave. So that affected me, right? That was one thing that affected my daily life. Aside from that, nothing else really affects us. Think about what you saw on the news today. How does it affect you? Even the president of the United States and who we vote for. Yeah, that affects us, sure, because it's the president. But, I mean, the past 4 years, the president really hasn't affected my life. I work at the same job. You know, he's helped out my taxes, so kudos, Trump. What else? And that's it. He hasn't called me to bother me or yell at me. Yeah, he's done that to other people. The president has been rude and lies and yeah, okay, whatever. But personally, that has not affected me. And that's my point here, is you're watching this stuff, you're consuming this information, and it really doesn't affect you. You might think to yourself, oh, I can't believe this is my president. And, you know, whether you're left or right doesn't matter. Even when, you know, Obama was president or Bush was president, there was always a portion of the population, it's always going to be like that, where they don't like the president. There's very few instances. There might be a small percentage of the population where the president has made a decision to directly affect your life. And I talk about that a lot right now because that's all that's on the news, right? Because it's election year and, you know, it's coming up. So I think we really have to think to ourselves on a daily basis, are we consuming the correct information? Are we really thinking to ourselves, okay, what I'm watching today, what I'm looking at today on my phone, this is going to affect me? And it's okay to educate yourself too. Don't think, you know, I'm saying don't educate yourself. How we spend our time is so valuable. And during this pandemic, I'm really understanding the value of my time and spending time with my wife, spending time on my hobbies, spending time on things that I want to do has been so important and impactful and has made me very happy. And I honestly, I mean, I haven't really been happier. I think I'm in a good place, you know, mentally, physically. You know, I canceled my gym membership. I work out a lot from home now because the gym was closed for a while. So I saved about an hour and a half of going back and forth round trip. So that hour and a half, now I'm at home and I spend more time on the podcast, or I spend more time with the wife, or, you know, I spend time, you know, obviously working out at home, but it doesn't take me an hour and 15 minutes to work out typically. You know, so little things like that I think are important. How we spend our time, not just physically, but also mentally. You know, how you're consuming that time is important. And that's why I think, you know, the media, politics, all that stuff, even if politics really, really interest you, that's great and that's awesome. But do not let it consume your life, though. You know, these people that I see on social media, even friends of mine, that all they post about is politics. It's like, yeah, you're passionate about it, but it's okay to be passionate about one thing, but when you're judging other people because they don't share your political views, that's crazy. And now you're spreading negative, you know, thoughts and messages and posts, you know, to everybody, to all your friends. It's just, you know, it's going to be a vicious cycle of negativity because you're spreading that to your friends, and your friends don't like you because of that. And then you get in these arguments, and these arguments, you know, end up boiling your skin. And then, you know, you get off social media, or you get off, you know, watching CNN or Fox, and then you go hang out with your wife or your husband, and you still have that anger and you take it out on them. And then that relationship is tarnished. It's like, if you don't think this stuff happens, believe me, man, it happens. And we really have to start identifying it because reality is very hard to accept. And the reality is no one's going to change their mind based off your argument. People are going to figure it out for themselves. So you putting negative things out in the universe for other people is not constructive. It's just hurting other people. You know, have you ever had the conversation with, you know, your spouse, guys, this is for you out there, but, you know, your girlfriend or your wife, and they get really, really, really angry. They get super frustrated at you for whatever reason. And your first reaction is to say, calm down. Yeah. You know where that goes, right? It doesn't go anywhere because that's a negative reaction. That's a negative reaction. And your wife or your girlfriend, they are not going to like you after that. So that's creating that tension. And that's what you're doing on social media, is if you're creating that negative tension, it's going to keep spreading. And, you know, I say all this because I think it's all connected. I think it's all relative to the one main topic that I'm trying to talk about today, which, you know, in this little rant I know is tough to sift through. But the one main topic is just cleaning your room. You know, literally keeping your shit organized in your house, right? And cleaning your room, because you don't want a gross room. No one likes that, especially if you're single. It's no bueno. But also mentally. You know, Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this, which if you don't know, you need to check him out. He's fantastic. A bunch of great YouTube videos. But cleaning your room figuratively as well, cleaning your room figuratively as well, which is just getting your house in order. You know, making sure your spouse, your family, your brothers, your sisters, your mothers, your fathers, making sure everyone's just in order. You know, fixing your home first, and then go to your community. And then once your community's fixed, then let's worry about some bigger picture items. But I think if we all individually just, you know, help ourselves first, focus on us, and that's where I talk about, you know, focus on your hobbies, your interests, you know, get into some real nitty gritty, your passions, you know, use this time to find what your passion is. And if you could do that, if you could focus on yourself, and then your spouse focuses on herself, you both are in a great place. Now that you're in that great place, now you can go help out friends and family, and you can go to your community, you can spread that, you know, positivity and that awareness. And that's kind of what we're missing. So as bad as this pandemic has been, it's really taught me that if we could just focus on ourselves and be grateful for what we have, whether it's your job or, you know, the amount of money in your pocket, be grateful for what you have, because tomorrow, with one stupid ass pandemic, it could be stripped away. So how you spend your time is very valuable. And don't spend time on your screen and worrying about some bullshit social media post or some media news story that doesn't affect you. Yeah, it's kind of important, blah, blah, blah. But it's only been important because we've been trained for it to be important. We've been hooked into that negative headline that we just want to know what it is. But if you just avoid it completely and only spend time with positive things and positive folks, you know, that's what's important. Because I think when another pandemic happens, because it's going to happen, when it happens again, you'll be more prepared. You'll have your place in order. You'll have your room cleaned. Everything will be exactly where you want it to be, and this won't affect you because you'll be in a good mindset. You'll be in a good place. You'll be positive, and everything's going to be taken care of. So that's really all I wanted to say, guys. You know, I hope this was of some value. I always enjoy kind of getting on here and ranting a little bit. You know, it's usually unscripted, so hopefully you like this. If you don't like it, leave me a review and I'll stop doing them. But you know, these are the one things I really like because they're real, they're unedited, and I just want to make sure that I kind of, you know, use this platform to express myself, and this is the best way I can do it. So again, I hope you got some value out of this. I can't thank you enough for the support. If you guys have not already, please do me a favor, leave me a review wherever you're listening to this, whether it's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, or you can check out my website, theberardo.com, where you can see all my blog posts, podcasts, and all that jazz. So thank you for the support, and as always, be safe, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.